guys who win Paris-Nice, history shows the big names who win Paris-Nice go on to win the Tour de France, and Jorgenson's now won Paris-Nice twice.
If you're going to say that he's going to be a leader or a winner of the Tour de France, he's going to have to switch teams and get a team of his own.
Hello everybody and welcome. We're back for our chat here on Beyond the Podium. I'm Phil Liggett and I'll be joined by a man just back from Tirreno Adriatico, TeJay van Garderen, while of course the other sensation of this early part of the season is the repeat victory by Matteo Jorgenson and the great final stage win by the American Magnus Sheffield. It rounded off, TeJay, an incredible period in American history. But there's a lot of things to talk about in the victory of Jorgenson here. Yes, he was a repeat winner, but in the end, he had to come with the strength of having Vingegaard, the two-time Tour de France winner, on his team, and he crashed out, and Matteo went on to win it. So let's talk about that for a minute. There's a lot to talk about on these two big stage races of the year. You were on one, Tirreno Adriatico. So anything you don't remember about Paris-Nice, because you were working on Tirreno and they're running concurrents, let me know and I'll help you out, because there were two great races and I watched them both. So what do you think of the situation with Paris-Nice and particularly with Matteo Jorgenson? Was he the leader at the start or did he become the leader halfway through?
Yeah. Forgive me, Phil. You're going to have to fill in the gaps for me on Paris-Nice because I was a little busy in Tirreno. I was definitely following along the race, but if there's anything I'm missing or any holes that need to be filled, you can cover for me. Also, sorry I didn't have time to shave. I just traveled this morning, but that's not an excuse. This has gone like 5 or 6 days, but but no, like what you talked about, Matteo Jorgenson. I mean, he was the defending champion. He was targeting this race. You know, Jonas was looking really good, got the better of him on that summit finish from what I saw. And I can't really blame the tactics because if you're Jonas Vingegaard, there are levels to this. Like, that's his team. The Jumbo or the Visma Lisa bike team belongs to Jonas Vingegaard right now. Matteo Jorgenson, you know, he's going to be one of those guys where it's like, okay, if you got this guy in your roster, you got to take a back seat unless you get the green light. And, that's kind of what Jorgenson had to do. And I mean, you could say he's lucky or unlucky. I mean, you never want to win a race due to a crash of a teammate. I mean, that's a terrible way to wish, but, I mean, I don't know, the cycling gods paved the way for Matteo on this one.
Now the question was Matteo always in his own mind going to go for victory in Paris-Nice? He actually said he's been thinking of repeating for 4 months, yet that wasn't ever alluded to as the race came to the start line. And Matteo got the first Maillot Jaune in the team time trial because he was first man of the team across the line. And so he became yellow. And there he was now, facing up to the tough stage of the Tour in the race lead. But the very next day, Vingegaard attacked, and he got the yellow jersey. He didn't win the stage, he finished second, but he was ahead. Now, was this a double cross? Was this, are they happy they just throw the jersey amongst the team? Was Matteo disappointed? He gave no indication he was. And of course, next day, well, as we know, Vingegaard crashed out, and Matteo inherited the jersey, and he never looked back. He looked like a real winner. And that'll bring me on to my next question, but carry on.
Well, Vingegaard did just watch Pogačar win Strade Bianche in very convincing fashion, coming back from a crash, catching Tom Pidcock, and then dropping him when it looked like things were over. So I think Vingegaard, he wanted to say, I got a point to prove. You might be winning over there, but hey, I'm capable of winning over here. Even though he didn't get the stage win, if he would have gone on to win, and a lot of those things, they might be even out of Matteo Jorgenson's control. I mean, the directors in the team bus, they might just be saying, this gives us our best chance to win. So Jonas, you better go and attack, and Jorgenson, you kind of have to cover the moves from behind. Yeah, and who knows? Maybe it was all set up for Matteo Jorgenson. Maybe it was like you attack first, and Matteo, you can counter off of that. But if Jonas, if you're strong enough to carry it on, go ahead and win the race. Like, the most important thing is you got to come away with the race win. And if you have two cards to play, you got to play both cards. That gives you more chances to win.
Now, the thing is that I feel, I was watching the interviews, particularly when they won the team time trial. There was Matteo, and he was sat alongside Jonas. Jonas seemed to be just gazing around the room while all the limelight was thrown at Matteo, and rightly so. Do you think the team decided on who would be first over the line in the team time trial? Now, I confess, I didn't see the team time trial. I wasn't here. But he was first over the line. Now, the teams are allowed to split up in the team time trial now, but I assume, in effect, he finished right in front of Vingegaard. I'm sure he did.
I don't know. I mean, every time I've done a team time trial, we had never decided who was going to cross the line first, because we didn't want to waste any seconds thinking like, wow, we got to reshuffle around. If you do that, you get to the line and all of a sudden you lose 3 seconds and you lose the race trying to decide who's going to cross the line first, when really the most important thing is winning the race. So, I mean, I was a part of a lot of team time trial victories between HTC and BMC and all their teams I've ridden for. And I don't ever remember it being a discussion on the bus, like, you're going to cross the line first. It could have been a topic that they discussed, but honestly, I think it was just the shuffle of the deck, and whoever crossed the line. And, lucky for Matteo, or maybe it was just strong enough from Matteo because he was clearly on good form. He probably was just doing a monster pull and nobody could come around him.
Now, as the season opens up now, we've got 2 potential Tour de France winners on the same team, because I do think Matteo this year has really matured. I think if he wants to, he can be right amongst the podium in the Tour de France, but he may have to get involved with Pogacar and Vingegaard. Maybe the team will play the cards they often play. We've got 2 leaders. Let's go along and find out what happens along the long road back to Paris. But I think potentially now, Jorgenson can be a Tour winner.
I think he can be. I don't think it will be this year. I think if Jonas is healthy and Jonas is firing on all cylinders, and he needs to stop crashing first and foremost, and we'll knock on wood for him, because, we all want to see him firing on all cylinders come July. But I think it's a little too early, and Jonas is still too much in his prime for Matteo to really get that green light and co-lead. I would love to see him in the Vuelta or maybe the Giro, and be able to lead there. If you're going to say that he's going to be a leader or a winner of the Tour de France, he's going to have to switch teams and get a team of his own. And right now, he's young. He's got time on his side, and he can develop and mature. But to match the explosiveness of someone of Pogacar or even Jonas, I don't see that happening yet. He would need a Tour de France that's going to really cater to his characteristics, like kind of similar to the Tour de France that Bradley Wiggins won back in 2012. A lot of time trialing kilometers, maybe a little lighter on the summit finishes. Not that Matteo's a bad climber, but maybe a little less explosive of a route. Absolutely capable of winning the Tour de France in the future. Just, I'd caution quite yet.
Now, back in 2012, you rode in Paris-Nice, and I think you finished in 5th place overall and took the white jersey. Am I right?
I did. I finished 5th in 2012 and 4th in 2013. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, how did you feel as a young whippersnapper from the USA? Now you're in the position of Matteo Jorgenson. You probably started to dream of winning Paris-Nice, because guys who win Paris-Nice, history shows the big names who win Paris-Nice go on to win the Tour de France, and Jorgenson's now won Paris-Nice twice.
Look, I mean, Paris-Nice, that's a race that was like my big white whale. I wanted that race so badly, and I'm a little jealous of Matteo Jorgenson. I'm happy for him. I mean, like, I love rooting for my Americans, but is a tinge of jealousy there because Paris-Nice, I always loved that race. And it was the echelons, the crosswinds, the time trials, like the climbing in the end. You have to be the most complete rider to win that race. And yeah, I loved racing it. I mean, everyone always hated racing Paris-Nice because of the weather, because the wind, because of all these other factors, the danger of it. But I absolutely loved that race. And I'm super, super excited that Matteo's been able to keep it in, with the Americans for the last couple of years. But there is a big difference between winning Paris-Nice and winning the Tour de France. Yes, there has been a lot of Tour de France winners or Paris-Nice winners that have gone on to win the Tour de France. But, a rider like, I don't know, Mikel Kwiatkowski, like he was also capable of winning Paris-Nice. I think he's finished on the podium a bunch of times. Paris-Nice, it's one of those sort of hybrid races where, if you're lucky and you can play it tactically, a non-tour contender can win that race. Tony Martin, for example, he won that race with a spectacular time trial, some good bike skills, and staying dogged in the mountains, and he came away with the win. And he was never really a tour contender. I was actually teammates with him back in 2011 when he won Paris-Nice, so that was a special memory. But Matteo Jorgenson, he's definitely going to be a tour contender. I would caution to say that Paris-Nice puts him into that echelon just yet.
Well, this year will be his fourth attempt at the Tour de France, and last year he climbed into the top 10. So he's got to be starting to believe in himself. The Americans are going to put pressure on him now. They're going to sell him as the next man to win the Tour de France for the USA. There's no doubt about that. How will he take that pressure, do you think?
Well, I think he'll be happy to take all that pressure and give it to Jonas. I mean, Jonas he's a two-time Tour champion, so that's perfect. Like he can come into the Tour flying under the radar the way he did just last year, when he finished 8th place, but even more so. Well, hopefully more so because Jonas, if all goes well, won't be coming back from a catastrophic injury where he was fighting for his life and will actually be firing on all cylinders. Let's hope that crash in Paris-Nice doesn't affect him too much and he can get back to smashing everyone like he is accustomed to. But I think Matteo's in the perfect situation. I think he can be the right-hand man to Jonas Vingegaard, and he'll climb right up there in the high ranks of the Tour de France and probably get into the top 5 and maybe even on an outside chance for a podium. But doing it, in the wings of Jonas Vingegaard. Excuse me.
Well, TeJay, you rode the Tour 9 times. Did you feel the pressure? Because you're a very promising young bike rider. Did you feel the pressure to have to win the Tour for the USA and stuff like that? How did you handle it?
I mean, I think Matteo has a bit more of a steady hand than I did. Yeah, I felt the pressure. It was in 2012, like you were talking about, I actually had Cadel Evans on my team, who was the previous Tour winner. So there, I felt no pressure at all. I was just kind of riding free, having fun, and I just happened to have a really good ride, and I rode into top 5. Once that happened for me, then that's when everything started to be a bit more real, and I started to feel a bit more of the weight of a nation. And
yeah,
I probably didn't deal with that in the best way, but
you had to,
it also felt good to have people believe in me. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Phil.
Yeah, well, you had a great guy in Cadel Evans, the only Australian still to have won Tour de France on your team, a leader. You were becoming strong enough, maybe not quite at his level, but you had the same situation that Matteo is in now with Vingegaard, 2 guys who potentially could win the Tour de France. How is Matteo going to go forward, do you think?
I would just I would take advantage of the situation that he's in. And I would say, look, Jonas, you've won the Tour twice. take all that pressure. The cameras can go that way. I'm going to ride free. I'm going to ride without the weight of a nation. I'm going to ride, you know, this is his team, but I'm ready. I'm ready if my time comes. And sorry, excuse me. I think if he approaches it that way.
You had on Tirreno Adriatico, that TeJay, but
oh man, yeah.
Yeah, in just a moment. Let's move on to Magnus Sheffield, the rider with a great British name. Sheffield is the city of steel. And after that performance by Magnus Sheffield, that was on that last day, it was an all-American celebration in Nice. We don't see that too often, if we've ever seen it as such. And that lone ride by Magnus, I think it wasn't just a triumph over the rest of the riders. I think it was a triumph over himself because he was very friendly to me when I saw him in the Tour Down Under in January. And I thought, this guy's really now going forward. He's just looking for a good performance. It came in Paris-Nice for sure, but he had the most harrowing experience 18 months ago when we lost a rider and he saw him killed. And I think that affected him for a little while.
It absolutely did. What you're referring to is that Tour of Switzerland when Gino Mader tragically lost his life. It was off the descent of the Abula Pass. And Magnus Sheffield, he, in a completely separate group, they both happened to crash in the same spot, you know, a minute and a half apart from each other. And Magnus, basically, he crashed and he just stumbled upon Gino there, who was just in a river. And, you know, I can't imagine what he had gone through. And the mental toll that takes on such a young kid. But he's come back strong. I've gotten the pleasure to work with him, or I've had the pleasure to work with him in the Australian World Championships a few years back, as well as the Olympics just last year in Paris. And he's a great kid. He is mentally tough. He's strong. He's going to have an amazing career. He can time trial, he can climb, and he's fast. And if he can put those demons behind him and move forward, which is easier said than done. I mean, he's just an amazing bike rider, an amazing person.
Well, I agree on all accounts. Now, this was his first Paris-Nice, actually, because he's always preferred to ride Tirreno Adriatico. And he comes to his first Paris-Nice and he finishes 4th overall. Now, he's riding for a team battling for recognition again, Ineos Grenadiers. And, of course, with Filippo Ganna, they had a great tour. Then they've crowned it with a victory from quite a surprising quarter, the wrong Ineos man winning in effect, because everybody expected Ganna to cross the line in first place on the last stage, having led the race for a week, losing it on the penultimate day. I'm just wondering what's the next step up now for Magnus. And by the way, can you tell me where he lives in Coon Rapids? Where is Coon Rapids in the USA? I never heard of it.
Ooh,
do you know?
Yeah, you're putting me on the spot here now. I'm not sure. I don't know, Joel. You better get on this. You better tell us in our ear where where that is.
That's good enough for me.
Okay, so he's actually from New York, upstate, Rochester. So, yeah, I'm a little embarrassed that I don't know that, but.
Well, I've done a lot of cycling in the state, and I must say it's a very beautiful state to ride your bike in, but that's by the by. So what's next now, do you think, for Sheffield? I don't believe he's going to have a crack at. I think he's missing out on that one.
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see what kind of rider Magnus turns into. I mean, he's an amazing time trialer. He's a sprinter. He obviously can get over some climbs. I think he's going to be some kind of, if I were to pick a rider to say that this is going to be the type of rider he is, I would say Mikel Kwiatkowski. You know, a guy who's fast to the line, but not a pure sprinter, a guy who can climb, maybe win Giro de Lombardy, stuff like that. I don't see him as maybe a Grand Tour contender, but he's also an amazing time trialer, capable of winning big one-day races, stuff like the World Championships. even Liège-Bastogne-Liège, but and 1 week races, maybe Tour of Basque Country, Pyrenees, stuff like that. But I don't quite see him as a Grand Tour rider, but by the end of his career, he's going to win a lot of races, and he's going to go down as a great cyclist.
Well, I'm going to follow him with great interest this year, and I hope we see him in the Tour de France as well, because I think Ineos are coming back to the old form of the good old days with the youngsters coming through to give him a hand. So we'll see how that one goes. Now, Coon Rapids, according to my producer, who is American, has discovered it's in Minnesota, and he was born there. But you're right, he was brought up in New York State. Yeah. Anyway, well, now you spent a little time, probably the whole week. I wouldn't know. I haven't spoken to you for as director sportif, I guess, on Tirreno Adriatico. The common link point of both these races this year, in actual ability, one started a while back, the 83rd Paris it was, and it was only the 60th Tirreno Adriatico. But they clash now, and so you've got to make a decision. And most people like Paris, not most, but many like Paris. The Italians like to go to Tirreno because they Tour de Tifosi, Euro Tirreno Adriatico, and as I say, until this last one, Sheffield only rode Tirreno Adriatico. There's a great similarity about the two races. There's the race to the sun, the other one's the race across the peninsula to the two seas. But the weather can be very similar. I can tell you, Paris made me never ever to want to be a professional in my life. I was so happy to be old and not able to ride a bike race again, because it was atrocious conditions. And then I think before we came on air, you told me that it was pretty grim in TeJay as well. What's happening? Because it really was a race to the sun in the old days. We finished in Nice and Basque on the promenades. Not anymore.
Yeah, no, it was a very typical Paris-Nice. It lived up to its nickname of the race to the sun. But yeah, Tirreno Adriatico, we had some nasty days. We had a 240-kilometer stage on stage number 2, I believe it was, and it was just freezing rain the entire time. And I felt so bad for the guys out there. I was like, first of all, I was happy that I was no longer racing and I could just put my seat heater on in the car and just like turn the temperature up to a couple degrees and put the windshield wipers on. And that's all I had to do. And just hope the guys never wanted to come to my car for a bottle, because I didn't want to roll the window down. But yeah, it was a nasty, nasty Tirreno Adriatico with some pretty bad weather and long stages, because we have Milan-San Remo coming up. And so Tirreno Adriatico, they always like to have these long stages, 210, 240, sometimes 215K stages, because they want the riders to choose this race as the preparation for the distance of Milan-San Remo, which is just under 300 kilometers.
Now, both riders were similar in one thing, and that was the weather caused a lot of accidents this year. And quite a few riders left with broken collarbones, and Vingegaard crashed out, for example, hurt himself pretty badly, but apparently didn't break anything and be back hunky-dory in a week or so. Michael Valgren went out. He broke his collarbone in Paris-Nice. Schelmoser was the worst crash. He hit these low ramps. He was unsighted, clouted it, fell down very heavily on his side and head. And he was ironically, it was on stage 6, and he won stage 6 of Paris-Nice last year. This time he's lying on the road, then on his way to hospital. He was only 59 seconds off Matteo Jorgenson's lead, with plenty of racing to come, and was looking good. We'll never know the answer to that one. But what is it? Why are so many riders crashing now? You had crashes in your race. David Gaudu he was knocked out of the race with a fractured hand, etc.
Yeah, these March races, if you can get through the month of March healthy, then that's already a major, major plus, because I don't know, something about these races, the weather, the nervousness, it's like the points that are on tap for these races, the prestige, like all of a sudden, we go from the early season sort of training races, I know Australia is important, but, everything really starts in March. And I feel like everyone, they sort of get that nervous energy. The weather's bad. And they're fighting for either the hierarchy, Jonas wants to prove that he's better than Pogacar, and, all the sprinters want to prove that they're ready for San Remo or the classics. And, we got a lot of points on tap, and if it's the relegation year, so everyone's super nervous about that. And it just leads to a dangerous racing. I mean, here on EF, we started the race with 7 riders. We finished with 4. Due to sickness, or like you just mentioned, the crash with Michael Valgren. And it was like that. You would look at the team cars in the convoy, and no car had a full rack of bikes because guys were just going home. Sometimes you'd see a car with only 3 bikes on it, which means that there was only 3 riders left in the race. It's a tough time of year. It's these races, they're just so demanding, so dangerous. The weather and just all of that just leads to some, and the sickness that's going around. It's cold and flu season, and just guys, if you make it through March, that's a tough month to make it through.
Well, the sprinters had a rough ride in both races. There's some nasty crashes on those approaches to the line. Jonathan Milan was involved in one, and he topped and tailed with a couple of wins, and he took out the points. But even so, he didn't take out the points, actually. It was someone else, but Mats Pedersen, I think. But everybody seems over anxious this year to want to get the name on the board. And I'm just wondering why it is, because the weather was so bad to take risks.
I don't know. Yeah, it's like I said, the points, the mind games, the prestige. The one guy who actually just kind of plays it a bit more cool is Mathieu van der Poel. He's the kind of guy who, he stays calm in these races. He stays safe, bides his time. You can tell that he's fit because every now and then he'll open the gas a little bit, but he doesn't take any unnecessary risks. He doesn't go too deep. And that's the kind of game he played a couple of years ago, right before he won Milan-San Remo. He was very quiet in Tirreno Adriatico, but every now and then he would do something like bridge across to an echelon, and you're like, okay, the legs are there, but he's playing it cool. So I don't know. I think it definitely helps having Audrey as his father. He probably can take the advice from him, saying like, look, keep your powder dry and use it when it matters. But he is better. He's better, but still a big wealth of knowledge you can learn from Audrey van der Poel.
Yes, you can. A very crafty Dutchman he was as a bike rider. He went head to head many times with Sean Kelly. But Mathieu finished 50th, which everyone would say 50th. The guy was rubbish. On the contrary, I mean, on the last day, he goes ahead with a long lot of kilometers left, it blows the breakaway, and he's riding 200 or 300 meters off the front of the peloton and won't let them come up. They've got to race up to him. And he was training. He's my hot favorite for Milan-San Remo. I'll tell you that now. We'll talk about that in a moment. But he's a man for the classics. He's won Tour de Flanders 3 times, Paris Roubaix twice, always beating Philipsen, who will come head to head with him in Paris Roubaix, in Milan-San Remo. And he's won Milan-San Remo, Amstel Gold Race, Strade Bianchi. He is a man for the occasions, I think. And I think he was just dialing into the peloton saying, guys, enjoy your race. I'm here to train. And to me, he gave that impression to everybody. And that was probably why, once he'd lost so much time, they weren't so worried about his attacks over the latter stage of the race. But anyway, I'm very impressed with him, and I like him, and I think he's a great aggressive bike rider. And there were other guys in there too, I think, hiding away, looking for their chance to show in Milan-San Remo. But all in all, I've got one bone, not a bone, TeJay, but I want you to answer this question because you're on the race. Why are the rules no longer seem enforced about wearing rain jackets that indicate what team they are? Because on one occasion in Paris-Nice, everybody was in black. Without crash helmets or shoes, a commentator would have been lost, in fairness. But what about the public, the people watching the race? They see a whole peloton go by in black rain jackets. I thought there was a rule where A, your number must be visible, and B, that never was in Paris-Nice, and C, you must also have the colours of your team amongst your overtops. You must know, because you have to supply your guys with their jerseys.
Yeah, so I actually remember this from taking the DS course. The rule is that you are allowed to wear black, because sometimes these waterproof materials, they only come in black. You can't make a colored waterproof material, but it does have to have the logo and the decals of the team visible. So like a pink EF, they could wear a black with they call it a GABA vest, but that's kind of the name brand. It's basically just like a kind of like the scuba neoprene gear. But you do have to have the logo visible of the team. So yeah, it does get annoying when everybody's wearing black, but it's just hard to make those waterproof materials in color. I don't know why, but yeah.
Complaining about that, because guys, it was exceptional and they deserved to be warm on those days. It was awful. But surely their numbers should be on the outside of those jerseys. In the tie photo finish, I can just see the commissaires scrutinizing to try and work out the positions.
Yeah, well, they do have transponders on the bikes. They also have a frame number on the back of their seat post. So, you know, at least the organizers are going to be able to get the results correct. But yeah, for the commentators, it's going to make that job a lot harder.
It'll be your problem in July.
Yeah.
All right, before we go to Milan-San Remo, the one guy who was outstanding, he was a red-hot favourite from day one, and he predicted what he was going to do on the last day of Tirreno, and that's Uae Team. He was absolutely brilliant. Now, is he a candidate for a big win in the summer and take on the others? Remember, a couple of big stars not riding these two early races. Remco Evenepoel still injured, and will come back later. And I've forgotten that right now. It doesn't matter anyway. They're all in the sidelines at the moment. So tell us the story about Uae Team.
Yeah, Uae Team, he has had an incredible early season, and he's got to have just put himself as red hot favorite for the Giro d'Italia, which I think he's riding the Giro rather than the Tour.
Okay. Yeah.
And you know, we got to root for him, because like I've said all along, he's still an American, even though there's a Spanish flag always next to his name. Like he has an American mother, I believe it is, and he grew up in, I want to say, North or South Dakota, something like that. But when I've spoken to him on several occasions, and when he speaks, he has an accent like I do right now, like proper American accent, and he's a fan of American football, so like he's our token American, and you know, anytime he wants to come race the World Championships for USA Cycling, we'd be glad to have him. But he has been just tearing the peloton apart this early season, and come May, he's going to be hard to beat in the Giro.
Yeah, but his team is UAE. Will he have the backup, or will they all be preparing for Pogačar?
I mean, UAE is as deep as the day is long. I think they've got enough resources to divide over the Giro and the Tour. And I was also very curious about the way that they raced on stage 6, which was the uphill finish. Ayuso was clearly in the driver's seat, had a good time trial, was sitting second to Filippo Ganna, and it was an uphill finish. And usually you would expect on days like that for UAE to just get to the front, ride back the breakaway, and just take control of the race. But they're like, you know what? We're going to play this thing a little coy. We're going to give this breakaway 5 minutes. We're going to actually, maybe even the breakaway can have a chance to win. And they forced Bahrain, and they forced, what was the other team that started right? It was a Q36.5 for Tom Pidcock and Bahrain that were doing all the work. And as soon as we hit the summit finish, Juan Ayuso just kind of said, thanks, guys. You did the work for my team. Grazie, ciao. I'm going to go on and win this thing. And it was incredible, because I was like, you know what? That was actually the smartest I've ever seen UAE play this thing. And if they ride the Giro that way, they could save a lot of their energy. Like, using some other teams to their advantage and using not always having to just say, we're UAE, we ride the front, we're going to drill all of our guys into the ground. We can actually save them a little bit. So I was quite impressed with UAE during this Tirreno Adriatico.
Okay, well, it'll be all eyes to the deck when we turn to Milan-San Remo, because TeJay will be back. Now, what we're going to do, since
I've got a hot take for Milan-San Remo.
Oh, wow.
Morgado. What's his first name? He's a Portuguese rider who I think we talked about him earlier, didn't we, Phil? This kid, he's like 20 years old. He's a neo-pro, but he has been impressing me so much that I'm actually thinking he's going to be the leader for UAE in Milan-San Remo, and he's going to be, I'm going to give him a 4-star. I'm still picking Mathieu van der Poel, but Morgado is going to be thereabouts, like sniffing the podium.
Interesting, Milan-San Remo. It's a long way. It's 290 kilometers, always a long way. It's been over 300 before now. It's the longest of the one-day classics. The talking point, I think, would well be the weather, because that's the trend in Europe at the moment. I'm in the UK, you're in wonderful Mallorca, where I'm sure it's nice and warm again after Tirreno Adriatico, but I can tell you it's very cold in the UK just now. And I think that the Classic's going to be probably up against the weather as well. So it's for tough men. I don't think they come any better than Mathieu van der Poel. But what about Tadej Pogacar? This guy's choosing his races this year very carefully. He's ignored the stage races now. He's not going to ride anymore. He's just riding the one-day event in his preparations for what's coming up the road, Giro, Tour, etc. So how do you see him taking part in this?
It's a tricky one for Tadej to win. With his riding characteristics, he's fast to the line. I just don't see him being faster than a Jasper Philipsen. I also don't see him being faster than Mathieu van der Poel. So he's going to have to drop him on the Poggio, and there's only one section of the Poggio that you can do that, because it's pretty shallow and it just gets steep at this one section towards the top. So if he can attack there and really drop everybody, but he's got to descend fast. San Remo, it's that old cliche. They always say it's the easiest one to finish, but the hardest one to win. And Tadej, he has to time it perfectly. But if he times it perfectly, he's in there with a shot.
He's tried. He's had a 5th, a 4th, and last year he finished 3rd. So maybe he'll get it right now. He's had a number of dress rehearsals stepping down the Poggio. It's a tricky descent. I mean, I remember Alain Bondou in the 80s when he'd just been the world pursuit champion. He crashed on the way down with Gomez. Gomez, the most unlikely man to win, but the man who should have won, Bondou, was left lying on one of the bends on the Poggio. And there was the great occasion, well, for me anyway, when I think it was mid-80s, when Sean Kelly left on the Poggio, the peloton, chased down the mountain, caught Moreno Argentin on the straight to the finish, and Kelly told me later, he says, Moreno asked me not to sprint him in the finish because Moreno was a big win for the Argentin, for the Italian in San Remo. But that's not a good question to ask Sean Kelly when he was the greatest sprinter in the world, and he won the race. So the Poggio decides, and that comes only about, you top out about 4 miles from the finish line. So that the speed they go up Milan-San Remo, up the Poggio, it's a free-for-all. And if you come over the top smelling the front, you could win the race.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a couple of ways to win it. You either have to attack in this one section on the Poggio and be strong enough, or you can come off the descent and hit a group from the back and get that gap the way Vincenzo Nibali or Jasper Stuyven won it and hold them off. Fabian Cancellara won it in that way. Or it comes down to a reduced sprint, the way Mark Cavendish won, the way Jasper Philipsen won. So there's so many different, just think for a second, the names that I just listed, they are such completely different styles of bike riders. So that just goes to show you that, you could have a Grand Tour rider win Milan-San Remo. You could have a pure sprinter like Mark Cavendish. You could have a strongman like Fabian Cancellara or Mathieu van der Poel. It's just, it's such a dynamic race that it's all about timing. It's all about hitting the moment right at that, right. It's a split second sort of race. At 300 kilometers comes down to meters, split second decisions. It's a super exciting race, but it's like anybody's race to have. And, hopefully Tadej Pogačar gets it, because that he's going to want to finish his career with all 3 Grand Tours and all 5 monuments. And, if anyone can do it, it's him.
Well, the route itself, it's traditional. It's a very traditional route. There's, as long as you keep the sea on the left, you'll probably get down to San Remo.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that, isn't it? But the Ticino is the big early challenge. Comes very early in the race. Very often it's a breakaway in front by some minutes that go over the top of that climb, because it's only 85 miles into the race. Then you've got a series of little climbs, about 10 of them. The most renowned is the Cipressa. That will come about 10 miles from the finish, and that really is where the race gets. If they haven't got the break back, they're in trouble. If they've got the break back, it becomes a free-for-all from the Cipressa, 10 miles out. Then you leapfrog, descend, swing, and up the Poggio, and then at the top of that, you're 4 miles from home. If you're still there after some 5 hours of racing, then you're going to think, I can win this. And it's got a great field. Well, it should have a great field. It's a great classic. But, I mean, it's got a lot of past winners taking part this year. Kwiatkowski's riding. Julien Alaphilippe is there. Jasper Philipsen. And all the teams aren't declared yet. Remember, we're recording this on the Monday. And they have till Friday to declare the riders. There's still a lot of names missing on the start list who could pop out the woodwork, and we might be surprised by them. Pogačar hasn't won, but he's there. Jonathan Milan says he's okay after his bumpy ride in the stage races just now. And Mats Pedersen, what about him? He got his stage win out on the courses last week, and he has never won a monument. And boy, if he starts with Milan-San Remo, and if the weather's bad, this man will be right at the sharp end at the finish. I guarantee it.
Man, that is actually shocking to me. You just said that Mads Pedersen has never won a monument like that. For a rider the caliber of Mads Pedersen, he's got to be that's got to be the one thing missing on his palmarès. A former world champion, multiple-time Tour de France stage winner. He's finished on the podium of just about everything. You got to think that he's going to want one of those monuments. I'm surprised. I'm actually surprised by that. No, he's got to be a red hot favorite, a 5-star favorite. Say that again, Phil? Sorry.
I say, no, he wants it. He said so. He wants it. And wouldn't it be great if he could? He's got a strong team, because Lidl.
Oh, yeah, he has.
He got
incredibly strong team. Yeah, he's got to be a big favorite. I mean, Jonathan Milan, I don't know if he can get over those climbs the same way that Mads Pedersen can, but if he does, he's faster. He's faster than Mads Pedersen to the line, but you got to get over the Cipressa, you got to get over the Poggio. And also Jasper Stuyven, a former Milan-San Remo winner, also on the team and also showing good form. Yeah, it's like, look, we could spend this entire podcast talking about all the potential winners of Milan-San Remo, just because there's so many different ways to win that race that, we could name 50 names, and the 51st name that we forgot about is probably going to end up being the winner of the race. But no, it's definitely going to be exciting to watch. And Biniam Girmay, maybe Biniam Girmay.
But I do ask you about Biniam Girmay, because all of Africa will be watching him in Milan-San Remo. I think this is the first time he's ever ridden it. Triple stage winner in the Tour. And boy, I'm not sure he's got the ability to hold the big men on the Poggio. Or maybe they'll beat him on the descent. I don't know, but I'll tell you what, there'll be a lot of cheering going on from the African continent.
I wouldn't bet against him. I mean, if he can win a race like Gent-Wevelgem, I think he's capable of winning a race like San Remo. If you get to the line with Biniam Girmay, you're going to have a tough time beating that guy.
Okay, well, I think we'll end it there, but we've had a great start to the season in Europe, because they made a big scene about saying the racing season starts now, and it just has, in atrocious weather. It could be bad weather on Saturday, for Milan-San Remo. There's a women's race for the first time this year. Demi Vollering will try to stamp her reputation on winning the first Milan-San Remo for women. That starts from Genoa and runs ahead of the men's race. I think we're in for a great weekend of cycling. Are you on Milan-San Remo, TeJay?
I actually am directing the Vuelta Catalunya, so I will not be at San Remo, but I will definitely be paying very close attention, rooting for my EF squad. Hopefully one of those guys can knock out a good result there.
Can I just mention Ben Healy, your man, who I think is the most entertaining bike rider. He never stops trying. He's always on the attack. He's like a cheeky little imp. Tell me about him briefly.
Oh man, I love Ben Healy. He is such a cool guy, super relaxed, but he is a killer. If he smells an opportunity to win, he will. If there's a 0.5% chance that he can cross that line in first, he's attacking. He's going to go for it. He's not going to do the calculations. He just goes and he doesn't look back. He's going to come up with a big one this season. I can feel it. He's strong. He's healthy. He's in just great shape. There were a couple of stages there in Tirreno when I was convinced, like, okay, this is going to be the one. This is going to be the one. And he was just barely off the mark, but he's due for a big one. And yeah, he's a fan favorite of just about everyone, and he's just the coolest guy you could possibly be around. So,
is he riding Milan-San Remo, by the way?
No, his next race will be Indurain and the Basque Country, on his way training for the Ardennes.
Tough races, those. Thanks ever so much, TeJay. What time is it with you? You can go and have your evening meal now, I guess, and get back to looking after and enjoy life in Mallorca. Thanks for watching, everybody, and we look forward to the next time we meet beyond the podium.
Good to see you, Phil.
For all your cycling content year-round, subscribe to NBC Sports YouTube page. We got it all.